So let's move on here and get down to business here. And the business is the lessons I learned from Emily Harrington's Girl Climber movie. And first of all, this movie's been in the making for quite some time. I think 6 or 7 years from when it was kind of maybe born. The idea of a female free climb, first female free climb of Golden Gate on El Cap. So that alone's a pretty audacious goal because it's not been done before. But then to agree to be filmed and have cameras literally in your face during perhaps the hardest time of your life, where you could quite possibly fail at your endeavor. So that takes, you need to be a brave person and really love climbing and embrace challenges to put yourself in that position. Emily worked closely with John Glassberg, who's the genius behind Louder Than 11. He's been around a long time making short climbing films. This is the first big movie I've seen him make. Maybe there's been others, I don't know. But John's obviously a talented dude, because this, in my opinion, held up to what Jimmy Chin did with Free Solo. I posted on Instagram a little bit of a review last night where I said that Girl Climber's as good as Free Solo, but in a different way. It was a different kind of movie, telling a different story. The consequences were, of course, gravely different in Alex's endeavor, but Emily put herself out there too, like I said, physically, mentally, spiritually, in trying to do something that had not been done before. And John Glassberg did a great job with his crew. Literally some camera shots right in her face. I loved this sequence of her and the monster off with, where it was just her face on the big screen, and you could just see what it's like to be just in that crack, I don't know, 2,000 feet off the ground. Some wonderful drone shots or aerial shots giving you that big expanse and giving people a sense of the exposure of being on El Cap. And I've been up on that wall one time, and it's just breathtaking, just to say the least. And so the film just does all of that, and it has a great story arc. And of course, Emily wins out. There's no spoiler because it's been a few years, and it's been well known that she did send Golden Gate. But the process was long and rigorous and challenged her in many, many ways. And so for her to take this on, kind of what came to mind is Jim Collins, who's a climber of my generation, one of my heroes, Colorado climber who went on to great success as a business consultant and author. He wrote a book called Good to Great. And one of the things that he popularized was the idea of BHAG, which is a big, hairy, audacious goal. Rare individuals who have in their mind and spirit to do uncommonly great and difficult things embrace BHAG ideas. Elon Musk, for one, the United States going to the moon. When President Kennedy said, we will send a man to the moon and bring him back alive by the end of the decade of the 60s, that was perhaps the ultimate BHAG. But Emily Harrington wanting to free climb, the first female ascent of Golden Gate, and to do it in a day, nonetheless, under 24-hour ascent, 30 plus pitches, that is definitely a BHAG. And so the 5 powerful lessons that I took home from the movie are things that any of us could apply to our BHAGs, whatever it might be. And it's not just in our climbing life, but in our life in general, because we have big goals, many of us outside of the climbing world, that we really put ourselves out there and put our heart and soul into. And so they're every bit as much a BHAG and a goal that you have to buy into and commit fully to even have a chance. Because the one thing about a BHAG is success is not guaranteed, because if it was, it wouldn't be a BHAG. So, Emily, John Glassberg documented this process quite well. And so let me give you the 5 take-home lessons that I took away from the movie. Number 1 is, when you commit to a goal and dive in fully, you have to recognize that you have to be into it or be committed to it for the long haul. Because again, it's not a BHAG if it's a goal you can achieve in a week or a month, something that you just know you're going to do it. That's not a BHAG. Emily picked a goal, which was something that had not been done before. So I guess that right there qualifies it as a BHAG if you're the first person in the world to do it. Hey, and by the way, Emily Harrington knows something about that concept because, and I've written about this and talked about this over the last few years a number of times. But one thing I love about Emily Harrington, the climber, is that she's not a one trick pony. She has excelled in multiple disciplines. She was a champion competition climber when she was young. She has climbed 514 numerous times. She's freed big walls and she climbed Mount Everest. There's no man that has done those things, so Emily's a true one of a kind. And so when she sets a BHAG goal, you better take it seriously. The critics better keep their mouths shut because people like that, kind of the Elon Musk spirit is not infallible and it certainly can fail and will fail because that's part of embracing multiple big projects. But those type of individuals seem to be able to dig deep enough and stay committed long enough to get the goal done. So take home lesson number one is you need to be in and committed to staying with and working towards and persevering and overcoming adversity for months, perhaps years. Dawn Wall, Tommy Caldwell, Kevin Jorgensen, that is definitely a BHAG. And he, I think, spent 7 years doing that. Emily's case, I don't know when she first went on to Golden Gate to kind of check it out and work it the first time, maybe 2018. I'm not sure. I believe she did it in 2020 or 2021. The calendar kind of got mixed up in my head last night after the movie, but it was a multi-year process for her for sure that she needed to stay committed and stay in the game. It's very easy when you have a project that takes that long to give up along the way. There's plenty of opportunity, and she had those opportunities, but of course she did not succumb to that. Lesson number two, when it comes to what it takes to achieve a BHAG, and that's you need to train for and embrace mentally and physically a bruising process. And you'll see that in the movie. She literally, in multiple instances, was bruised and beaten by the route and by the process of working and climbing the route. But again, Emily's not a stranger to pain and suffering. In fact, again, alpine climbing is a lot of pain and suffering, climbing Mount Everest for sure. Big wall climbing, I often joke because I have a lot of friends who are big wall specialists. And I joke that the average person sues for pain and suffering. They get in a car accident and sue the person that hit them for pain and suffering. Big wall climbers, they just go out and seek pain and suffering. They spend money to go and have pain and suffering on a big wall. So lesson number two is, you need to train for, and that is something that you need to start training for many, many years to accumulate kind of what I call a callus, a physical and mental callus that allows you to just survive or push on through the pain and suffering of a climbing endeavor. So, and again, I've written in my book, Maximum Climbing, about Tommy Caldwell. He's had many adversities along the way. He's logged thousands of hours of training. His training in the past has been legendary, what he would put his body through, not just climbing specific training, but just, long days. Alex Honnold, lots of long days, hundreds, thousands of hours of climbing and hiking and climbing in the dark and all of these things that stress the body and really, most importantly, recalibrate the brain. This black box in our brain, the central governor that makes us stop when we're exhausted, physically or mentally exhausted. That black box gets recalibrated through exposure to progressively higher amounts of pain and suffering, things that require mental and physical stamina. And so that's something that you need to accumulate to do a big wall like Emily just did. You need to accumulate that over many, many years, perhaps even decades. So that's something that a lot of young climbers in their teens and 20s are in that process now of accumulating that experience, recalibrating that black box in their brain to set them up, give them what it takes to, in their 30s and 40s, do amazing things. Emily did this route, I think, at age 32. Climbers, of course, can do great things into their 40s and 50s, and I'm still hanging in there at 60. So, it's a long journey and something you can continue to accumulate experience and that callus that I talked about that allows you to persevere through pain and suffering. That is really, really critical. Okay, so that was lesson number 2. Lesson number 3 is you will face adversity. If you set a BHAG, something that's going to take you seasons or years to achieve, there's going to be adversity and plenty of opportunity to bail out along the way. And again, you'll see in the Girl Climber film, Emily had those opportunities where she probably had doubts, and it would have been so much easier to give up the dream and to quit. But of course, she did not. So again, that's something that, to some degree, that mentality, I think you learn in your childhood, maybe the way you were raised or what you were subjected to. People like Emily Harrington and Tommy Caldwell, certainly as young climbers, being in the competition scene, but also as outdoor climbers, had bouts of adversity and were kind of the crucible that forged who they became many years later. Again, in Girl Climber, you'll see that just in the process of climbing the wall, her multiple attempts to free climb Golden Gate, there was a fall where she hurt herself badly, a 40-foot fall in the dark that could have been a deadly fall. Thankfully, it wasn't, and she was able to return months later to resume her mission. And then even on the day that she sent the route, she took a bad fall that easily she could have pulled the plug when that happened. And so being able to persevere through adversity is lesson number 3. It's a skill that is gradually developed over many years of facing adversity, probably losing in some of those matches with adversity, and also winning and learning that you can win over adversity sometimes, not always, but sometimes. Lesson number 4, and this is a big one for sure, and it was exemplified in her movie, the Free Solo movie about Alex Honnold, very much showed this as well, is that even though climbing is an individual sport, it still takes a team. And Emily built a support team. And any of us who set a BHAG goal in climbing or in life, it really helps a lot. It's, I think, essential to have some kind of a support team spiritually, but also physically. In Emily's case, she had partners that were willing to go up and work the route with her and belay her and be there through multiple attempts over multiple seasons. Her boyfriend, husband, Adrian, obviously was a critical piece of support. And, for pro climbers, the sponsorship is important as well, because to be able to fully commit to training and to climbing, it needs to be your job. You can't, it's really tough for someone to have a 40-hour-a-week job and try to be a pro climber year round. There are folks who have kind of done it and done amazing things, but the rock stars that we know, again, the Alex Honolds, the Tommy Caldwells, the Alex Megoses, the Lynn Hills, the Emily Harringtons, they're sponsored athletes. Their job is to climb. And so they're getting a paycheck, might not be big, but they're getting something to live on and help support their mission. And so the sponsors are part of that support system. But I think the biggest in Emily's case, just from watching the movie, and I know them a little bit, not well, but I've been around them in climbing situations. And Adrian's a wonderful dude and was a great support. And I think my favorite moment in the film was on her send go towards the end of the film, when it seemed like everything was lining up to do the route. She took a bad fall, I don't know, 30, 40-foot fall in a corner, and took track climbing, you can take weird falls and get hurt. And she hit her head and was bleeding. And my wife and I were talking to each other. She must have had a concussion because it looked like her head really hit the wall hard. And, when she got lower down to the ledge and she was bleeding and crying, and she's like, it's not going to happen. It was for a moment, probably more than a moment, she thought it was done. But Adrian said, "You're going to do it today." And so her partner and, spouse helped her in that moment to push on. And she did. She regrouped, she sent. Amazing, amazing moment. So touching. Okay. And let's move on to number 5, the final lesson from the movie. And the most important is you must believe in the end game. I don't care who you are, what your goal is. If you don't have 100% belief deep down that it's doable, that you have what it takes, if you commit fully and stay in the game, if you don't have that level of belief, big things can't happen. And this is where some people do get shut down because they may have that belief, a very strong belief in themselves, but then they hear their critics and the naysayers out there. And Emily, in the movie said that she had some people like that were saying that they don't give her a high chance of doing the route. That can get in your head, obviously. And especially in the social media era where faceless people can leave comments and say nasty things. It's easy to, as an athlete, for sure, if you're a professional athlete, NFL player or whatnot, the critics can just destroy you if you let them. And so you need to drown them out or tune them out, turn off your social media and get away from the naysayers. Don't give them your time or attention, and instead focus on the people that believe in you and internalize that and use it to build a deeper belief in yourself. But that is really what it takes to be successful at anything. And I think that's one of the things that is so important for younger people raising 2 sons who are now in their 20s, but when they were teenage athletes, is giving them that belief system and teaching them that really there's 2 types of people in the world. There's doers and there's critics. Doers and critics, it's a mutually exclusive trait. So if there's a person talking shit, being critical about you or anyone for that matter, that shows really who they are, what their character is. And you should not be hanging around people like that. And so you want to seek out the doers of the world and be around those people, whether it's at the gym, the crag, or just in your everyday life, because that empowers you. If you surround yourself with strong-minded, strong-willed doers that think out of the box and have audacious goals, and they're, idea people and big thinkers and mission oriented people. I love that. When people reach out to me and have a mission, I want to support that. And again, when you run into the critics of the world, get away from them quickly before they drag you down, because it is toxic and it can spread like a disease if you're around it a lot. And so, again, I think Emily surrounded herself with people who helped her build a stronger belief along the way. And she had Adrian there in that critical moment to help her recognize that the game wasn't over that day when she took the fall and hit her head, but she just needed to regroup, and she still had physically what it took to get it done that day before the 24-hour clock ran out. And it was a beautiful thing to observe. And so thank you to John Glassberg for making the film. And obviously, thank you to Emily Harrington for getting it done and showing us by example these wonderful lessons that I just outlined here.